Pam Bondi needs to be fired in order for America to get what it needs done, including the designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization, the prosecution of that, and making sure our rights, specifically our free speech rights, are not taken away as we go into this endeavor of getting rid of violent extremists. Of course, I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney, and this is a legal mindset. We let you be your own judge. And I'm going to, kind of take an even-keeled stance here. I've got something for Pam Bondi, who is obviously part of the administration. She's obviously a Republican, but I've also got a lot for Antifa and all those that think Antifa can't be designated a terrorist organization. I got news for you. They can, and there is a good way to do that. So we're going to get into that today on the legal mindset. So let's get into it. And I want to actually start with a video. And this is Pam Bondi talking about speech and hate speech. And it's on the Kate Miller podcast. And this is so important because remember, this is our AG. This is our attorney general. This is the person who is going to be behind not only taking these violent groups down and prosecuting them, but also behind drafting the laws that get passed and doing all sorts of other things. And understand, her incompetence, her stupidity will be reflected in law, which is a massive, massive, massive risk. So let's take a watch at what she says here and how this is utterly incoherent.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
So this is the most incoherent thing ever, and it's something that harkens to the UK in hate speech, right? Hate speech as it's designated in the United States, and I'll pull up the slide here where my good friend Nate, the lawyer, talks about this, where we have speech, we have free speech, right? And by and large, across the board, hate speech is free speech. You are allowed to have hateful ideas and opinions. That is free speech. That is actually allowed, right? There's very, very limited exceptions. And if we want to talk about what's permissible and non-permissible, the real mistake Pam Bondi makes here is she doesn't know the difference between what is allowed and what's not. And what she is confusing is hate speech and hate crimes. She doesn't even know the difference. That's something you should know the difference about if you're the attorney general, the top person in the United States. But we all know, and it's very clear, she is a pure political appointee. In fact, it may just be Trump likes blondes and wanted a blonde in the office, right? Who knows, right? But she is not the right person if she cannot make this basic legal distinction that even people in law school, a 1L in law school knows this, 1L being a first-year law student, by the way. A 1L knows that this is permissible speech. Things like ideas, opinions, debate, dissent, and even hate speech, even hateful things. If you say something like, I hate this person, that's okay. You're allowed to say that. What you're not allowed to do is a hate crime. A hate crime is an idea coupled with an act, right? There's a criminal act. So you're going out and doing something criminal and you're doing it with a hateful idea, behind that, right? So those are coupled together, but just speech alone is not enough. And once again, Bondi doesn't understand this concept. What she should be focusing on, and which any incompetent AG out there, any competent, any knowledgeable AG would focus on what's important here, the 4 areas of impermissible speech. And if you hear me talking about this, I am always talking about one of these 4 areas. These 4 areas are the areas that right now we need to go after. Law enforcement, the president, everybody, businesses, we all need to target these 4 areas. This is what we need to focus fire on because in the legal realm, we are in the clear in nuking these areas. And if we clear these out, America becomes so much better. We don't have to go into taking our rights away. We don't have to expand the law. Just focus on what the law already makes illegal. Let's look at that. Incitement, so speech that directly incites imminent lawless action or criminal activity. This is a lot of the speech online. We talk about Hassan's speech, other speech online that's hateful, directed towards violence. That's incitement. right? You're saying, hey, go out there and delete these people, go out there and hurt these people. That's incitement, right? Then you've got harassment, creating a hostile environment. Well, if people are creating a hostile environment where, people perhaps of a certain gender or race, perhaps white men don't feel comfortable, that can be harassment, right? So we can go focus on that. We can also focus on defamation. Defamation is not legal, and we can even add and strengthen the penalties on defamation. That's perfectly fine as well. We can do that. And also we can tackle true threats. And true threats is an actual threat of violence, saying, I'm going to go hurt this person, right? So all of these are okay. And trust and believe that if we actually take action on a lot of this stuff, which we've been sleeping on, especially with the radical left has gotten a pass on this for a long time. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's both sides. And fair enough. If somebody on the right does this, they should be prosecuted as well. Don't get me wrong. But the radical left has gotten a pass on a lot of these categories on defamation, harassment, incitement, and true threats. And if you just crack down on these, that is more than enough. That is plenty sufficient to sweep up a lot of people. And in fact, if you do what Bondi says, you're actually doing a hard left move, because you're actually, by adopting hate speech laws, going to the far left, going to a sort of the UK Orwellian, this is the approved speech, this is the not approved speech. We don't want to go there. That's not a place America wants to go. So, and by the way, going down the road that Bondi wants us to go down, that can end up getting overturned in the Supreme Court. And the last thing we want to do is get this stuff reversed, right? That's the last thing that we would want to do, because it would really end up setting the whole movement back. The other thing is, there's something coming up called the Smith-Mundt Act. And this is something that's got a lot of traction, right? So this is the Media Accountability Act. And it's not formally drafted yet. People are just talking about drafting it. They're talking about naming it the Charlie Kirk Act, although I believe Charlie Kirk might be appalled by the way it's actually executed. And this would impose fines of up to 35% of the company value on media. And many people say it's a precursor to a social credit score system, right? Or essentially a company credit score, a company score. And what they're going to target is things like bigot, racist, fascist, and perhaps stuff like Nazi and white supremacist. Now, I don't have as much of a problem with something like Nazi or white supremacist, so long as you create an objective definition saying, okay, well, it is per se defamation to call somebody a Nazi unless they are either a formal member of the National Socialist Party of Germany between the era of 1920s roundabout to 1945, right? So if they're a formal member, you can call them a Nazi. Or if they self-declare as a Nazi, that's okay. That's fine. But otherwise, if you call somebody a Nazi, that is per se defamation and they have damages. Okay, that might be reasonable, right? Because that would hurt someone's reputation. You can't just going around calling people a Nazi. It's way overused on the internet. It's way overused everywhere in media, and it needs to stop. Same thing with white supremacists. If you are openly a white supremacist, you declare yourself as one, or you're a member of a group which publicly, as its platform, espouses white supremacy, then sure, then you can call somebody that. But otherwise, defamation, right? Now, something like bigot, racist, fascist, those are a little bit harder, right? So maybe you could say, okay, if you're part of something that openly espouses those views, maybe, but otherwise it's very difficult to say that, right? So how they do that, how they define that, it's going to be a little bit more tricky, right? Something with an objective criteria like white supremacy or Nazi, that might be a little more clear than bigot, right? Because bigot, what people can view as quote unquote bigoted or racist, varies widely. So what one person calls racist is another person saying, okay, that's just somebody making a joke, or that's harmless, etc. That's humor, right? So that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So my kind of problem here is I don't want Pam Bondi drafting this. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She's going to screw this up entirely. This requires so much legal nuance that I have zero faith that this woman can do this, or the team even under her, because she's going to be directing it down a bad path, and they're just going to follow her like blind gnomes to, or lemmings right over the cliff, right? And I know there's some debate whether lemmings actually go over cliffs, but it's a metaphor, okay? So I now want to shift gears with this, and actually it still goes with Pam Bondi, because once again, Pam is going to need to execute this, and I have zero faith. But there's this declaration of Antifa as a terrorist group. So the other day, I actually prepared this whole slide deck and everything before, but I ended up redoing it. Trump said he would 100% label Antifa a terrorist group, and it turns out he went and made a tweet. Now everybody is going out here and saying this is an official declaration. It's official declaration. It isn't, guys. This is not an executive order. There has not been an executive order that I've seen yet. I need to see the language. So this is just him tweeting. Now, let's talk about how you would do it right. Once again, I don't think Pam Bondi understands this. I think Pam Bondi has no idea how to do this. So let me explain it. And maybe somebody can pass this to her team, or, the person that succeeds her, if she's hopefully fired, and get this done the right way. First of all, Trump can unilaterally direct law enforcement to prosecute. So Trump can unilaterally say, okay, FBI, go after Antifa. That's fine. They can do, that's just a directive. That's giving them, the executive is saying, hey, it is your priority to prosecute Antifa. They do that tomorrow. They can bring RICO charges against Antifa. That's completely possible. So that the president can do unilaterally. Now let's talk about these designations, because this is where people get legally stupid. And this is where Pam Bondi has no idea about this. And we're going to talk about domestic versus foreign. So here's the thing. The domestic terrorist organization designation does not exist. There's no federal statute on this. There's no way to officially designate a domestic terrorist group. It does not exist. So the only way you could try to do this is by executive order or by an act of Congress. But those are super flawed processes, because first of all, if you do an executive order, it's immediately going to be blocked by an activist judge. And by activist, I mean someone that's opposed to Trump and the administration, just like with all other executive orders. And honestly, I'm being real with you guys. It may not stand up to judicial review. So as it's blocked and appealed, even if that gets appealed, to the next level quickly, which, by the way, this could take years to appeal, it may get destroyed at the appellate level or at the Supreme Court level. So I have no promise, or there's no guarantee this would work if it's done domestically. If it's done by an act of Congress, so help us God, it's going to be a slow process. It's going to be stalled. It's going to be potentially compromised, overboard, pork barrel politics. There's going to be something else slipped in there. Somehow our rights are going to be infringed on as part of this. An act of Congress would be a giant mistake. What they can do right away, and what a smart attorney general, once again, not Pam Bondi, a smart attorney general would designate a foreign terrorist organization, FTO designation, because yes, we already have an established method of designation for foreign terrorist organizations under the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act. This occurs within the Department of State, right? It is unlikely to be blocked by judicial review because it must be challenged within 30 days, and there's a very limited scope of review. All the court can review is whether there was, quote unquote, substantial support, which just means, hey, is there some proof, right, in the record? And is this not arbitrary, capricious, abuse of discretion, or otherwise illegal? And anybody who knows the law in the Supreme Court knows that arbitrary and capricious is almost always passed by the government. They almost never find anything as arbitrary and capricious. It's very, very difficult. So, okay, as long as you have some proof, that's good. And honestly, this is the craziest thing. No designation, not one single designation that's ever been made has been overturned. That's powerful, guys. That's really powerful. Compare that to executive orders. Executive orders get tossed out left and right. It's more likely than not that a executive order will be tossed out, right? So, and you're not getting any interference from Congress on this. And the criteria, and let me get through these criteria here. The group must be foreign, right? Engage in terrorism, and threaten U.S. nationals, national security, or foreign relations. So let's go about group must be foreign. So their origin is in Germany. I cannot pronounce this correctly, even though I try to I speak a little German, but I always get this wrong. Antifasciste, and I always get that one wrong. Fascist, yeah. Action, right, with a K, right? That's the origin, right, or originated in Germany. So it's got a foreign origin, right? That's part of it, and it has many foreign members. And the other thing too is, this is huge. Foreigners such as Canadians. And once again, remember, Canada is a foreign country. The federally funded, the state-funded Canada Anti-Hate Network is aiding Antifa. So we literally have a foreign government. And once again, Canada is very much engaged in radical left activism. I'm sorry. I know a lot of Canadians. I love a lot of Canadians. I love Canadian friends. I love you guys. But the government of Canada is very much sanctioning a lot of extreme leftist beliefs, right? Especially what will be considered extreme leftist by American standards, right? So that shows that there is a strong foreign tie here. So we can, I believe, meet this element. And at the very minimum, you could say, okay, the foreign elements of Antifa, right? Those can be designated if you want to try to split those off. But I think you could do the whole thing because it's very loose and decentralized, right? And that's similar to some cartels, to some mafias, etc. And that's a good comparison because we're going to show you that's exactly the type of groups that have been designated as terrorist organizations this year. So engage in terrorism. There's been multiple incidents of terrorism and violence that Antifa's done across the U.S. This is easy to prove. Second, and then lastly, threatens U.S. nationals, national security, or foreign relations. Honestly, it has all three. It damages all three. But if you wanted to do the easy one, national security is a layup. It's very clear. So there's no really debate there. So let's look at the foreign terrorist organization, shall we? If we look at what those are and what's been designated, you see mostly cartels and gangs from MS-13 down there on the bottom, all the way up to Los Choneros and Los Lobos, which were designated this month. Those are gangs, and those were designated in September. So everything that Trump has done, except for, a couple here, like the Balochistan Liberation Army, which is a Pakistani and breakaway, thing. Most of these are, and some of the Middle Eastern ones, etc. But most of these are cartels. Sinaloa cartel, etc. So if you think about how cartels operate, cartels have domestic elements. They have people in MS-13 and Los Lobos, Los Choneros that are in the United States. And those are successfully held up. Those haven't been overturned. So they're very much comparable. And if you look at the actual language on how they designated these, and you say, international cartels constitute a national security threat beyond that posed by traditional organized crime. So you could say Antifa constitutes a national security threat beyond that opposed by a traditional organized crime. That would stand up. The convergence between themselves and a range of extra-hemispheric actors, from designated foreign terrorist organizations to antagonistic foreign governments. This is true too. Canada, we have proof that Canada is an antagonistic foreign government. Trudeau is literally behind this. He's literally helping them, right? You've got complex adaptive systems, characteristic of entities engaged in insurgency and asymmetric warfare. Absolutely. And infiltration into foreign governments across the Western Hemisphere. Once again, sorry, our northern neighbors, but obviously you've got some people in the woodshed up there, and there's people in Europe, etc., other places where Antifa has infiltrated. So the consequences, and this is huge, this is massive. If we are able to get this designation, if we're able to do this, we can make it a crime to knowingly provide material support and resources to a designated FTO, which means even if you're an American, if you're helping Antifa, you're done. So in this way, even if we just designate the foreign elements, Antifa within the United States that is helping outside the United States, we get all of Antifa. We get all of Antifa through this foreign FTO designation. This is the way to go legally because you get everybody with this. Next, if you represent that FTO, you're inadmissible to the U.S. or you can be deported. So all of these activists, which are being flown into the United States, which are coming in here to assist, etc., deport them all, ban them all. That will really cut down on the numbers in these demonstrations. And last, this is the most important, U.S. financial institutions processing or controlling any assets may block all transactions. So all of those foreign assets from the foreign organizations clearly blocked. The domestic ones can probably be blocked too, because once again, they're supporting the foreign elements. So you're blocking a ton of assets. You're freezing their money. You're stopping them from working. And this would absolutely shut down a lot of the most extreme violent action in the United States. Once again, a prerequisite to this happening is a competent AG that understands these differences. It's difficult. Most people on Twitter right now do not understand this. And guys, you're going to need to share this out. You're going to need to share this information. It's super important because most people do not understand this. And listen to me. If we do not do this right, if we do not do this correctly, surgically, we will lose our rights. We need to clean up America and get the violent people out, but we don't need to do it with such haste and zeal that we give up the rights that we fought for, that we've spent hundreds of years fighting for, right? That Western civilization has given thousands of years of moving towards these rights, towards the perfection of these rights as seen in the United States. Guys, it's very important. So make sure you like the video, you comment, you share it out, because this needs to get out. Until next time, guys, take care.
Wow.